This is a 2024 Toyota Land Cruiser First Edition. The return of the iconic Toyota brand, which took 2 years off, but comes back less expensive, leaner, and more off-road capable. This J250 series Land Cruiser replaces the J200 Land Cruiser, which first arrived in the US for the 2008 model year and stayed through 2021. In many parts of the world, the J200 Land Cruiser was replaced by the J300 Land Cruiser, which is much more similar in philosophy to the J200. But for the US and Canada, we get this instead, and I have to tell you, that is fine by me. There are 3 trims of Land Cruiser to start. The base 1958, which commemorates the first year that the Land Cruiser was sold in the United States, the standard Land Cruiser, and this top-of-the-line First Edition. This latest Land Cruiser hopes to return to its more rugged, off-road friendly roots, but with a modern interpretation. Does it succeed? Let's find out. I review all kinds of cars, and I have fun every time. Please subscribe and join me. The base price for a 2024 Toyota Land Cruiser 1958 is $57,345. Going for this fancy First Edition raises the price by 19 grand to cost $76,345. And my test car includes a 2-tone paint and an all-weather cargo mat to cost $76,825. All right, now is a good time for me to pull over and show you around and inside the Land Cruiser in a bit more detail, show you the options, and show you all the cool tricks this thing has. Looking at the front of the car, this is clearly a big departure from the J200 Land Cruiser, and I have to say it is a welcome change. It's taller, it's chunkier, it's blockier, it's got this nice grid built into the upper grille, some more down here, and just big fat rectangle chunks as you go down. It just looks tough, and it also looks a lot closer to the original FJ40 Land Cruiser that we first saw in 1958. This being the First Edition trim of the Land Cruiser, we get the round headlights just like the 1958 trim does. The middle standard Land Cruiser trim gets square headlights here, which is a little bit more like the J60. We also get this beefy roof rack up here, these rock rails over here, and this very beefy skid plate down here. The First Edition also gets what Toyota calls heavy-duty mud flaps. Also, the hood has 2 bulges on either side of it, one on the driver's side and the other on the passenger side. But what's quite interesting is what's underneath it. Well, there it is, your turbocharged 2.4 liter inline 4-cylinder hybrid engine. 326 horsepower, 465 pound-feet of torque. Also, this is longitudinally mounted, or fore-aft like that, which means that the transmission is behind the engine and that it's more easy to tuck the engine back. If you look at the front axle center line, it is right around here, kind of the back of this fuse box, which means most of the engine is actually behind the front axle. This is the truck platform after all, so it is an inherently front engine rear wheel drive setup, even though the Land Cruiser is full-time 4-wheel drive. And yeah, windshield washer fluid is really easy to get to right here up front on the driver's side. Looking at the Land Cruiser in profile, this gives you an even better understanding of how big and boxy this thing is. This definitely fits the traditional SUV 2-box shape. This is one of 7 colors you can get. It is called Sand. It is a standard color. However, my test car does have the optional grayscale paint up here on the roof. That is a $350 optional extra, and I think does look really nice, adds more contrast to everything. I will go ahead and put the dimensions up on the screen right now so you can check those out, and let you know that I have a lot more information in the description. So here's another look at your 18-inch wheels with 265 70R 18-inch tires. These are Michelin LTX Trail tires. look at the glorious sidewall we've got here. 70 series rubber. I haven't seen that in a genuinely long time, and it is just, I have to say, a pleasant surprise. And yes, this is a square setup. You get the same wheels and tires in back as you do in front. Looking at the SUV from the back, I mean, it's just big and tall and boxy. All right, let me show you cargo space, and actually let me start by pressing this button right here. Yes, we have an independent glass lift for the cargo space right here. Gas stretch to hold it open, so quick, easy access to your over 46 cubic feet of storage behind the second row. I really dig that. But yes, the full hatch does open. It is fully powered on the standard and first edition trims and has a lot of space inside. Opening the tailgate reveals a high loading floor, but a lot of space, nice wide access to it. And the only other option we have in my test car, this $130 all-weather cargo mat. And it does, as you can see, have holes built into it so that you still have access to these lower tie-down straps right here. But there's actually more underneath this mat, so I'm going to remove it. This is like the natural floor of the Land Cruiser, but you see it goes up a few inches. Well, the floor, this new floor, has a lot of little compartments built into it. And if you need more than 46 cubic feet of storage space, yes, that is easy to do. Pull a couple levers and you have more than 46 cubic feet of storage space and room for you and a passenger. You can see that there is this step between this floor and this floor, another 4 inches or so. But you also might have noticed, if you pull the lever again, the seats go all the way back like this, and you actually get like an 8-inch step down to this floor here. So if you need a taller space here, you have that option as well. I do still think my bike will fit quite easily, but let's find out. Oh, I have to lift it higher than usual. But once I get it up there, yeah, fits super easily. It is a little bit of an exercise to get the front tire above that step, but otherwise, plenty of room. Easy peasy. There's one more thing I want to show you back here. Here's another look at the storage compartments under the floor. Also, here's your jack and access to the battery and your tie downs. Also, there are USB Type-C ports and cup holders back here on both sides. And right here is a 2,400 watt AC power unit right here. This is standard on all Land Cruisers, and that amount of power is definitely helpful. Okay, first thing I'm going to do actually is start the car. Push button start is right here. And I'm doing that because we have a 3-zone climate control and I wanted you to see it. I am 5 feet 11 inches or 181 centimeters tall, and I have, you know, a good 3-4 inches of knee room. I also have pretty decently high seat bottoms, so reasonable thigh support. I do have headroom, but less than an inch of it, but I also have less than a 90-degree bend in my knees. And I also have a cigarette style port right here and 2 USB Type-C outlets right there. And of course, I do have a center armrest with a couple of cup holders. So yeah, a road trip back here would be no problem at all. Okay, to the front. Because this is the first edition, I do have leather on the seats. If it were a 1958 edition, we'd have cloth seats, and the standard Land Cruiser gets Softex material. These seats do also have power adjustment here, and that does include lumbar support right there. We also have the usual controls on the door right there, including 2-position seat memory. We do have a nice big bottle holder and map pocket right there. And we do have several controls to the left of the steering wheel. We do have electrically adjusting tilt and telescope steering right here as well. And how lovely is that? The floor mats say Land Cruiser. On the 1958 edition Land Cruiser, you get a 7-inch instrument cluster, but on the standard and this first edition, you get a 12.3-inch fully digital instrument cluster, and you do also get a head-up display just above that. On the 1958, this is an 8-inch display. On the standard and first edition trim, you get this 12.3-inch display. Regardless of what size of the display, you get wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto as standard. Beneath that, we have the first 2 of our 3-zone climate control. We also have heated seats, which are standard, ventilated seats, which come on the standard Land Cruiser and this first edition, but not the 1958. We have a heated steering wheel as well. Beneath that, we have camera view options right here. Next to that, I also have 3 more USB Type-C ports right there. And below that, I have a wireless smartphone charger right there. Lovely. This is standard on the first edition, optional on the standard Land Cruiser, and not available on the 1958. Next to that, we have the mode select. So drive mode, you could say, but it's also way more than that. I'll go into that in just a moment. That's right next to our nice and beefy Prindle right here, which does include manual shifting right there. Just beneath that, we have our electric park brake and our hill hold. And beneath that, look at all the full-time 4-wheel drive options we have right here. Traction control, center locking diff, rear locking diff, stabilizer bar, disconnect mechanism. Next to that, we have a couple of nice deep cup holders right there. And beneath that, lower center console. But it's not just lower center console, it is your cool box. You can turn it on and off right there. And this has AC blowing to keep things nice and cool inside. Looking up, we do have a digital rear view mirror right there, so it doubles as a screen for the rear camera. And past that, we do have some light controls and our options for the moonroof. It is a manual privacy panel and then electrically opening otherwise. Lovely. Let's talk drive modes. We only have 3. We have Eco, Normal, and Sport. Select the multi-terrain system. And now we have Auto, Dirt, Sand, Mud, and this one I especially appreciate, Deep Snow. You also have the Hill Descent and Crawl mode. That couples really nicely with having a 2-speed transfer case, 4 high, 4 low. As you can see, you have a lot of equipment and a lot of options for taking the Land Cruiser off-road and doing a lot of different things. And all this powertrain equipment, the 2-speed transfer case, the locking center and rear diffs, all of that, it's all standard equipment. On this particular drive, I'm not going to be able to exercise that stuff too much, but we'll see if we can do a little. But to do that, we have to get back to the drive, so let's get back to the drive. All right, let's dig into the powertrain. Where does 326 horsepower and 465 pound-feet of torque come from? Well, I showed you under the hood. It's that turbocharged 2.4-liter inline 4-cylinder hybrid setup. It is the only engine offered in the Land Cruiser, and it's a very cool, very potent setup. The hybrid bit comes courtesy of an electric motor sandwiched between the engine and the transmission in the bell housing. It gets its electricity from a 1.87 kilowatt hour nickel metal hydride battery pack. Bigger than I expected. This turbocharged 2.4 liter has found its way in a lot of Toyota and Lexus products, and usually the torque output I see from that engine peaks at around 315 pound-feet, which means the electric motor is doing a healthy amount to add to the peak torque of this engine, but horsepower is mostly the turbocharged 2.4 liter. The electric motor probably adds 50-ish horsepower to the equation. Toyota, of course, didn't tell me exactly. This being an iForce Max engine means that we do get an automatic transmission. This one is an 8-speed automatic transmission, and generally it works really well. We are going to spend most of our time on road in this review, and that's okay because we get really pretty decent power here, considering that this is an at least 2.5 ton large, tall SUV that has to push a lot of air out of the way, we get pretty darn decent acceleration. Having 465 pound-feet of torque does a lot to help that out. So that acceleration right there was in the normal drive mode. If I put it in sport and floor the accelerator again, yeah, it gets a little bit jumpier. And yeah, that's good, solid acceleration from this thing. You have robust power, even though you don't have traditional large amount of displacement. The outgoing J200 Toyota Land Cruiser came with a 5.7 liter V8, a naturally aspirated V8. Great sounding engine, good rumble, good low end torque and all of that. But this, in terms of pure pace, matches it just fine. And in reality, exceeds it. And going from a V8 to a 4-cylinder, especially one that's a hybrid, obviously has a big impact on fuel economy. You get 22 miles to the gallon in the city, 25 miles to the gallon on the highway, 23 combined. Not stellar numbers when you compare that against similarly sized crossover-based SUVs, but considering the equipment this Land Cruiser has and its capability off-road, that's really pretty decent. Also, compare it to the outgoing J200 Land Cruiser, which got 13 miles to the gallon in the city, 17 miles to the gallon on the highway, 14 combined. Yes, that big naturally aspirated V8 rumbling along. But as important as fuel economy is, acceleration is still way more fun. Of course I had to test that. Let me show you that right now. All right, everybody, time for an acceleration test in this hybrid only brand new Toyota Land Cruiser. I do have it in the sport driving mode, and I do have the traction control off, but with full-time four-wheel drive, I'm not expecting any wheel slip, just in case. All right, let's see how it goes. Okay, coming to a complete stop. Foot on the brake. Floor the accelerator, about 2,500 RPM, off the brake. Oh, that's not bad. Okay, there we go. Okay, pretty early 1-2 shift. Yeah, there we go, close to the red line there. Yeah, that's totally reasonable. That's pretty stout, actually. Yeah, that was better than I expected, to be totally honest. This thing weighs more than 2.5 tons, and it's only a 4-cylinder engine. But the turbocharger and the hybrid power combined to give you a very healthy torque number. And while the launch is a little bit on the slow side, it's really very healthy acceleration. You know what? This isn't necessary, but I am curious. So, putting it in neutral, shifting to 4 low. Okay, coming to a complete stop. Foot on the brake, floor the accelerator. Ooh, 2,200 RPM. Oh, off the brake. Oh. Okay, yes. Obviously, very different set of speeds for the 4 low setting. You could see that it was an odd launch because the computer was trying to figure out what was going on, but quick shifts, very quick revs, very different. We probably got up to like 5th or 6th gear there just then. So yeah, there it is. 4 low acceleration in the 2024 Toyota Land Cruiser. All right, let's dig into the chassis. This is built on the TNGA-F platform, the same platform that Toyota uses for the Tundra, the Tacoma, and the Sequoia, not to mention the Lexus GX and the Lexus LX SUVs. This is a body-on-frame SUV, and it has a double wishbone front suspension and a solid rear axle 4-link rear suspension. It is smaller than the outgoing Land Cruiser, and that largely comes out of the overhangs on the front and back, especially in the front, and that definitely improves approach, breakover, and departure angles. We now have 31 degrees of freedom for approach, 25 degrees for breakover, 22 degrees for departure. And despite losing a lot of displacement, it can still tow up to 6,000 pounds. And while I don't have an off-road test to take you on, I do feel that we should at least get off the pavement. So let's do that right now. Here we go. Now, it's just a dirt road. It's not anything like actual off-roading. I'm not trying to equivocate in any kind of way, but it does just go one step closer to taking advantage of the 70 series tires we have here, and we are dealing with a little bit of loose gravel. It's obviously not as smooth in terms of the road surface itself. It's something, and it does give us a chance to feel what this thing feels like once you're off the road, and it feels very, very comfortable, very, very natural here. Obviously, you can see that we're moving around just a little bit, but the softness of the suspension makes it still a very comfortable experience, and just the robustness of the structure is inherent. Now, I just switched to the multi-terrain system, and I turned it to the dirt setup, so we are now on dirt, and just for fun, slowing down a little bit, flooring the accelerator. Yeah, these Michelin tires have no problem with this looser surface, and it feels stable and steadfast, and everything's good. Now, I did play with it just the tiniest little bit during the acceleration test, but let's put it in 4 low, see how that feels on the dirt road. Okay, coming to a complete stop. Putting the car in neutral, 4 low. Back and drive. Third, fourth. Yeah, I mean, clearly this is made to be able to do serious off-roading, whereas the J200 Land Cruiser had inherent capability built into it. It was more of a luxury machine than it was like a truly off-roading machine. And you can see that Toyota took a lot of price out of this Land Cruiser and just made the inherent structure more suitable for serious off-roading. And yet, I have to say, considering everything, it's pretty comfortable on the road as well. And that's true of unpaved roads like this one, paved roads like what we were on before, and the interstate. I did test it there as well. Let me show you that. All right, everybody, time for a quick stint on the interstate. See how this 2024 Land Cruiser feels on the open road. But first, I wanted to quickly show you the different options for cruise control, because we actually have quite a few. First, we're looking at the right side of the steering wheel. You turn cruise control on and off here, and that also sets the initial speed for cruise control. Then you have your adjustments here, cancel here, but this is where you set distance, and this is where you choose whether you want standard or adaptive cruise control. I really love having this option. We're in the adaptive cruise control, but if I hit the mode button again, we go to standard cruise control. You handle the distance yourself. There's a lot of circumstances where that's what I prefer. Also, this button right here is what turns on the more advanced stuff like lane tracing assist, lane keeping, that kind of thing. So you hit it, and that whole lane thing shows up, and that little steering wheel handle shows up to show you that it's going to do more, not less. Finally, when I hold down the OK button on the left side of the steering wheel, this screen pops up and I can pull up driving support. And that pulls up this whole lane thing and shows you a little bit more of what's going on, what the car sees on the road. All right, let's get on the road. All right. Time for that short interstate test. This Land Cruiser is a modern Toyota, so it does have Toyota Safety Sense, this one 3.0, and that gives us a whole bunch of driving aids. I'll go ahead and put those up on the screen right now for you to check out. One of the new ones is called Proactive Drive Assist. That uses all the other systems and kind of combines them to kind of just do more driving if it sees any obstacles of any kind. That's an interesting thing. I do have it on, but I do have it on the least sensitive version of itself. Okay, cruise control is set at 78 miles an hour to go with traffic. At that speed, the engine is spinning at less than 2,000 RPM and is very much in the background. And we are going through a subtle curve right now, so I'll take my hands off the wheel. And oh yeah, lane tracing assist is doing its work and keeping us nice and centered in the lane. This is a very windy day, and it still does a really good job to keep us centered. And that's impressive because this is a tall and a high center of gravity car, and it's got a lot of objects that the wind could push on, and yet it still stays stable. So I'm impressed with that. Also, I have to say, this is quieter than I expected. Given its height and size generally, it's got a very big frontal area, and yet it's doing a really good job of keeping the wind and the wind noise out of the cabin. I was expecting more wind noise than this, to be frank, so I'm very impressed with that. And the tires and the road noise generally is also lower than I expected. This is a much quieter cabin than I would have guessed. So yeah, high marks to Toyota there. And comfort is also really good. That I was expecting. We've got those big 70 series tires, lots of sidewall to work with. We have an inherently softer suspension. I will say that the seats aren't quite as supportive as I was hoping. It's a little bit on the flat side for me. I do have the adjustable lumbar, so adjusting that does help some. It's generally comfortable. It's just that the other things impressed me so much that the seats as a counterbalance are a tiny bit underwhelming. But the center display is nice and big, easy to read, easy to use, and the digital instrument cluster has a lot of options that I just showed you as well. In terms of comfort and everything, it's actually a very good road trip car. The height and the size of this thing and all the added bits, you know, the rock rails down on the side and the roof rack up top, that does make fuel economy only so-so. We're getting right around 20 miles to the gallon, even though the official EPA rating is higher. So it's gonna cost you to take this on a road trip, but you will be very comfortable. So what do I think of this J250 2024 Toyota Land Cruiser, this one, the first edition? I like it a lot. I mean, there is a lot of coolness built into this Toyota. In the last several years, there's been a big push for more overlanding and off-road friendly vehicles. We saw that with the return of the Bronco. We saw that with what Jeep continues to do with the Wrangler. And now we get to see Toyota truly put itself back in the ring with this Land Cruiser. No, this clearly isn't as serious as a Jeep Rubicon or the Sasquatch Bronco or anything like that. But it definitely goes in that direction. And there's a lot of inherent capability built into this Land Cruiser. But almost as important, I'd say, is the true, from skin to marrow, return to the roots. Toyota successfully, in my opinion, definitely garners a lot more of the inspiration of the original FJ40 and the earlier FJ60 Land Cruisers. In fact, it's enough so that I'd say when it comes to on-road driving behavior, this is actually not as good as the outgoing J200 model, except for fuel economy. It is really soft. The body moves around quite a lot. You get a lot of pitch and dive in this car. You get tons of body roll when you're leaning into corners in this car. But all that translates to real comfort and confidence when you're getting off the pavement. Combine that with what we just have to say are really nice, sharp, strong looks and a much lower price tag. It's a very compelling combination. I'm Robin Warner. Thank you very much for watching.